Game and Movie presents interviews from MGC 2018. What is up, everyone? This is Tony here with Game and Movie Podcast at the Midwest Gaming Classic 2018. I'm here with my partner, Mark.
Yep.
And we are joined by a developer of a game called DeathBall, and his name is Tony. What is up, Tony?
How's it going, Tony?
It's going well, Tony.
Yeah, I love the Midwest Gaming Classic, and one of my favorite things is meeting people who make their own games. I can play Galaga anywhere, but, I can't play some of these indie games anywhere. And meet people who are doing it. It's so exciting and so fun, especially when I play a game like DeathBall, which personally feels very, very tailored to my own interests, and I really enjoy it.
That's why I had to get you over there, definitely,
Tony,
right
play
away.
it. Mark, you got to play this game.
So, Tony, you came up with this game yourself. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why don't you tell everyone exactly what DeathBall is?
Sure. So, DeathBall is a 2D arcade platforming soccer game with wizards. Kind of the fastest way I've learned to describe it is 2D Rocket League. It feels a lot like Rocket League, a lot of Twitch positional soccer play. The two biggest games I was playing at the time were Rocket League and Killer Queen, so it's kind of a mashup of those. There's a little bit of an influence of Downwell in there, if anybody's familiar with that fun iPhone game.
Yes, actually, yeah. It's
it's
a weird falling roguelike almost.
It's a falling roguelike. You wear little gun boots. The principle of the design is everything has two functions. The gun boots shoot and they slow you down as you fall. It's really beautifully designed. If you haven't played it, please check it out. But if you do play it, you will notice that my art is very much an homage to the Downwell high contrast,
yes,
3-color. He does 3 colors. I have 4 colors, but that art style.
Yeah. Speaking of the art, I really love the aesthetic of this game.
Yes.
You're a cute little wizard. There's like potions bubbling. I really love the aesthetic of the game. It's like simple but also cool looking.
Thanks.
Pixelated.
I played a lot of Killer Queen.
That's
We
an awesome
run
game,
tournaments
too.
for that. I love Killer Queen. It's an extremely fun game. If you haven't played it, try it out. It doesn't read very well for people who haven't played it, though, which is one of the few criticisms I have of it. So I wanted a game that really read well to spectators who hadn't played. That's how you're going to reach your Twitch audience. That's how you're going to post videos, and people are going to be like, that's a game I want to play.
Yeah, generate buzz.
So the high contrast art really worked for me because it makes it very clear kind of what's happening, and your decisions aren't muddied up by the aesthetics behind you and stuff like that.
How long ago did you start working on this game? You're a solo developer, right? This is all you?
Yep.
Okay.
I built the first cab and designed the cab myself, so I've learned an immense amount doing this. But so about a year ago, I was living in San Francisco. I was playing Killer Queen every week. I was learning game design on the side, and I was a software developer. But I really wanted to do some game design stuff, so I started making games for game jams and doing stuff like that. I started taking them to the barcade and playing them, and most of the reactions were pretty like, nah, that's fun, and which is what you're going to expect when you start game design. You're not going to make a great game right away.
Yeah, right.
I decided I was going to move to do a VR startup. I didn't know what. I was thinking like VR arcades. I just know I needed to get out of San Francisco where it was expensive to do this. I packed up all my VR stuff and shipped it out, but there was 2 weeks till the big Killer Queen tournament, and so I stayed with a friend those last 2 weeks to play in that because I made a lot of friends in Killer Queen, and that was a huge opportunity to have a send-off.
That must have been really important for you to stay for another 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was. And I didn't have anything to do because my VR stuff was gone, so I picked up one of the first games I ever worked on. I'm like, it's terrible, but I'm going to rebuild it from the ground up, and it was a 2D soccer game. And so in 2 weeks, I built the prototype. It was just the wizards and jumping and bubbling, and it was one map, and it didn't have all the fancy particle effects and stuff, but the concept was there, and I had a lot of fun playing it. I took it to that tournament, and people loved it, and that was the best reception I ever had, and that was really awesome. And I was like, cool, I made something somebody loved. That's the first success of a game designer, And the bar owner and bar manager started playing it, and they played it for an hour, and they're friends of mine, so it's not like they came to me out of the blue, but he came up to me and he said, if you put this in an arcade cabinet, we'll put it in the bar.
Oh, hell yeah.
The rest was like, yes, of course, yes, I would love to do that. So
you kind of developed the game while you were playing a lot of arcade games in arcades. When you envisioned it, when you started the game, or when you start games, where do you see it going when you start? Do you see arcade cabinet? Do you see Twitch? Do you see phones? What are you thinking?
Okay, so yeah, I think a lot about the controls.
Because it's very different depending on what your end goal is.
Yep. And it's not like I was out of the blue with the arcade game. I knew that arcade was something I wanted to do eventually. I always told Sean, the bar owner at Barcade, someday I want to build a cab. I think it'd be fun to just build a game and have a cab and have this like physical location. So he knew that was already on my mind. So I think that's why he, pitched it to me. So I do try and think a lot about that. But one thing I have learned is you can build up all these grand ideas and you can build up all these ways that you think things can work, but you're the best when you just put it out there and then you let your instincts tell you if it's right or wrong. And so playtesting has become a huge part of my tooling for game design.
Yeah, getting the feedback is pretty important.
That jumps me right into the point I wanted to make earlier. Almost everything that's interesting about that game has come from feedback. The very first time I built it, it was a jump and a bubble. That's it. You had two things you could do. There wasn't infinite jumps. And the first time I sat it down to play test it with my good friend Eric Florenzano, we were sitting there playing, and he's like, I want to jump more times. And I was like, okay, like how many more? And he's like, infinite. And I was like, it was funny because I thought about 2 jumps, a jump and 2 bubbles. So I had a variable I could just adjust. And I was like, I'll set it to 1,000. And secret, it's still at 1,000. So if you jump 1,000 times, you will not be able to jump anymore. In the air, every time you land, it resets. So
I love the feeling that you're flying around. It's like you're a little out of control, but you know that you can like get to that point. Like if you played it enough, you would hone your skills, and you're just this wizard flying around like a Death Eater, because you're just like,
I agree.
Shoot, you're shooting around.
Those controls felt so good to me, like right away.
Sure. I had this purist idea about it that it was like when you jump and to make a bubble, you sacrifice position. So there's no down jump. You can't get back. You don't get recovery. I watched this really interesting YouTube video, and I'm not going to remember what it is to plug it here, but he was talking about there's a version of Street Fighter somebody made where everything's overpowered, and he talks about like what is fun, what is balance. Okay. If this game is fun, is it good? And I was like, I'm gonna try the down jump. And eventually I added the slide, which is a really quick move across the screen, essentially a turbo. And all of a sudden, like there was all this recovery, and I realized that like I'm not overpowering it by making a lot of recovery. I'm just making a higher, faster paced game.
Yeah, and it's equal playing field. I mean, if everyone can do it, then it's fair.
Yeah, you're giving more tools to each player, which doesn't make them more powerful if they both have access to it, yeah.
It has limited something like 4-player. People talk about, can you do 4-player? There's too much recovery in this game for 4-player. It's too many people around the ball because you can instantly get back to it if you overshoot it.
I don't mind the 2-player. Also, you have to have a much larger cabinet if you're going to play 4-player.
Yep.
That's right.
And when you play, like, that Cosmotron's game is 4-player, I was playing 2-player, and there's, like, 2 empty spaces. I'm like, I feel like there should be 2 other people here. You just feel like, I like the focus on 2. I think it's fine.
And
Larry David's here. Oh, my God.
Larry David?
Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm just just by.
Forget this guy. Larry!
Okay, shut up.
Sorry, Tony, but we're going to have to wrap this up. No. Now, would you consider this game is almost done in your eyes? Or do you still envision it as taking a little while to iron out every little thing?
Mechanically, I think it's done. I have a mechanic I actually have on a setting on there that I can turn off called the air grapple because, part of my goal when I started this, and a lot of times when you're like, where do you start? I actually like to start with restrictions to what I can do. So the restriction here was 1 button. 1 button, 1 joystick.
Yeah.
And constantly people were like, I need a turbo. Give me a turbo button. But forcing myself to solve that with the slide that still was 1 button made it a more interesting game, I think. So I really like to put the requirements on myself, and depth with 1 control with a big thing I was going for. So there's still an up jump that has nothing to it. So I have this thing called an air grapple, which is like you grab the ball and you fling yourself upwards, and it kind of like is a way to throw the ball across the screen. I played it. I think it's overloading too much, so I think I'm drawing the line at the mechanics. I think mechanically I filled it about as full as I can get it. But I picture you tap a little RFID thing to sign in. You have ELO, you have your stats, you have your different bubble trails, your different colors you unlock as you play. Like I envision more of the game that unfolds. It's less about the mechanics and just more about making it fun to be a part of the community of DeathBall.
And so when it comes down to the time, would you consider putting this on Xbox Live or the Nintendo Switch eShop or Steam?
So when I started out, I was so purist. I'm like, it's going to be arcade only. And it didn't come out of a place of, I guess, pedantry or purism. It actually came out of the fact that Killer Queen formed the best and biggest group of friends I ever had, and I wanted to do that for other people. Then I would go to these play tests, and people would be like, when is it coming out for Steam? And I'd be like, it's going to be arcade only. I feel pretty strongly about that. And then they'd be like, I don't live near an arcade, and I want to play it. And I was like, I don't want somebody who wants to play my game not to be able to do it. But I want it to be an arcade game first. So I don't know what it's going to be. I'm trying to find that balance. I do want to go to Switch. I think it would be great on Switch.
Yeah.
I do want to go to Steam because I want to give it the access to people. But I want to get like 15 cabs out there and establish some scenes and really establish it as you think of the tournament scene, it's going to happen in bars. You think it's like the big movements where you go to the community cadence, the social cadence is all going to be at bars. And you can take it at home and play with your friends and practice and everything. Or if you're not near a bar, you can get that. But I really want to establish it as an arcade game. But I do want to get it to those people that don't have the access to arcades and still want to play it.
Yeah, I could see it actually succeeding very, very well if you had, online components on. Wow, I would play that on my system at home.
Yeah, great
Absolutely.
couch co-op game.
Yep. So when I was thinking about going to Switch, I play tested, made my screen really small on my computer and see if it still read well. And it made me really happy. I did the high contrast thing because you can read it on a small screen so well. So
nice.
You could have that screen set up on a picnic table with the Joy-Cons. Have you played Rocket League on the Switch?
No, I haven't. No.
You fumble a lot because it's a little smaller of a screen when you're playing on the go.
Lower resolution.
So I'm really hoping that this translates well to that small screen because I think that I love the Switch. I love that mode of it. You set it up and you just play anywhere with friends.
I think it definitely would. Yeah, I would refuse to play Breath of the Wild on the Switch. Or actually, I have it on Wii U, so I have the screen. I just feel like I didn't see things. I need the grandiose view. Like, I'm not going to play it on this little screen when I can be playing it on my TV. But your game, yeah, I definitely could see it as a handheld.
Yeah, and I'd love for people to play it on the TV too, of course. But yeah, cool.
You told me something really interesting about the one button and where you were inspired by that. Do you think you could tell that story again about Mario and...
Oh, yeah. So there's this really great YouTuber named Mark Brown.
I'm subscribed.
He does Game Maker's Toolkit. If you're getting into game design and you haven't watched Mark Brown, you are in for a treat. Watch all of his videos. They changed the way I think about game design. I honestly think that before I even started game design, I started watching his videos, and the way he breaks it down, the way I think about it is people have good taste. Sorry, I'm getting a little off topic.
No, go ahead.
People have good taste, but they don't know why they like something. They just have good taste. So I had good taste in video games, but I didn't know why a video game that I liked was good. I just knew that it was good. And he broke it down in a way that I understand video games at such a core level.
He's so good at it.
Yeah, he is so good. So one of my favorite videos he does is about Mario's jump. And one of the most profound things he says in there is with the joystick, the Z button, and the A button, there are, and I don't know the exact number, but like 16 different jumps you can do. There's the jump, there's the double jump, there's the triple jump, there's the long jump, there's the ground pound, there's the side jump, there's the back flip, there's the
running back
there's
flip.
the wall jump.
Yep.
All contextual, all compositional. And I was like, for me, that was like, how do I do that with a button and a joystick? How do I pack a little bit more into that? So there are contextual things like when you're jumping off the ground, it's different when you're jumping in the air. There are compositional things like if you down jump, you jump downwards. If you down jump on the ground, you go into the slide jump. And there's even things that you guys might not have seen yet that I hide in there, like a thing called the hard bubble, which when you jump in the air, when you make a bubble, if you hold the button, once it forms fully, it'll turn hard.
Oh.
And then the ball can't pass through it and the player can't pass through it and it doesn't break.
So you're setting up like a bumper, like a pinball bumper kind of?
Well, what you're doing is you're trading your movement for a harder bubble because you're holding the jump button. It only stays hard as long as you hold the jump button. As soon as you let go, it turns into a soft bubble.
Oh.
So you can't jump.
Okay.
You can just stand on the ground, but you have this bubble that's unbeatable.
So it's a barrier. If DeathBall is heading toward the goal, hard bubble, and it could block it.
Yep. Or sometimes when there's like a narrow gap between platforms, you can hard it down bubble through it and block the chasing player from getting through there. And they have to go all the way around.
Right
now
on.
you have so much advantage.
That's amazing.
It really works well for disruption. And the thing is, I didn't design it for any of those things. There's a map that has vertical goals, and I played on that a lot when I was trying to figure out the air mechanics. I wanted a soft touch, so that's what I designed it for. It never works in that game for soft touch because people are always around. You don't get that long to enact a shot on the ball. But people have taken it and using it in such interesting ways. I'm so glad that I left it in there. And I couldn't explain even all the ways without you seeing the game, but it's in there.
Yeah, it's that's awesome. When I'm sure for you, when someone uses something of yours that you didn't even plan on, and it's just like, whoa, okay, now I see how this. Sometimes that leads to other ideas as well. I'm sure that it's a really good feeling when something like that happens when you're watching them. You know,
I feel like I made this guy that's fun to drive, and then people show me how to drive it in unique ways, and that's when I felt like I knew that the controls had the depth that I wanted. If somebody could express themselves differently and still do well at the game, then the depth was there for the controls.
Yeah, I felt like I had a lot more to learn I only played it maybe 3 games, and I feel like I could perfect it, or maybe not perfect it, but I had a lot to learn.
Yeah, me as well, actually. I think that just honing my skills, getting better with the precision, the bubbling, and now that I know about hard bubble, I'll probably go over there and test it out.
Yep. And so, there's no instructions to the game, and that's intentional. And the reason for that is
there isn't.
You're in an arcade, so other people are around and playing, and talking to them forms the community. Reaching out to them to be like, how did you do that? That creates bonds that form the community. But another thing is, education, I think, is less fun than discovery.
Absolutely.
When you put the instructions up and you're like, this is all the things that the game offers, people are like, I'm done learning about the game after I read this. I know everything the game does. If you ask them to discover it, they'll never stop searching for new ways to affect the ball, and that's what I wanted to promote.
Yeah, and if you play an old arcade, there's no instructions, you got to figure it out. So it kind of does, an homage to a classic arcade games.
And there is the classic map that it's very traditional, goals on the side, a couple platforms in between. You don't need to know about even the bubble mechanic to score on that map. Just the lift. Just jumping next to the ball, you can lift it into the goal. I think it's fun to play just reading the opponent and knowing when to jump over them. People who don't even ever discover the bubble, they're still fun to unlock there, and just learning how to use the lift and read your player. And so I always wanted to make it's fun at every level, but you can always figure out that next level.
That's great. Yeah, the initial level. That's another thing that Mark Brown talked about. You can teach so many things by your surroundings. Excellent. We've got to wrap this up. Tell people where they can find more information about DeathBall and maybe contact you yourself.
Sure. So very simply, if you need to get in touch with me, Tony@deathball.co. I'm not rich enough to own the .com.
You're missing an M.
Yeah, it's not a typo. I also have a Facebook page. That's where I do most of my updating, because it's just the easiest way to reach the audience. If you search DeathBall, it should be the first one, but it's also /DeathBall Arcade if you want to find it that way. I have a Twitter. It's not very popular, but if enough people start following me on there, I'll start posting on there. And then we are doing a run of 10 backer cabs. Again, I'm trying to figure this business out, so I want to do a special for anybody who wants to partner with me early. We're going to do those 10 cabs at $1,000 off. There's a top-mounted spectator screen that is an add-on we're going to give away for free. There's a limited edition side art that my wife did that's beautiful, of the ball touching the goal and the wizard getting zapped. And there's a 1-year license on all the non-arcade equipment. So $6,000 plus shipping and handling for that. And if you're really interested in that, please contact me and I'll make it happen.
That sounds great. I know I'm going to be checking it out and watching you in the future and seeing what's going on with DeathBall. There's a couple arcades springing up in Milwaukee, 1983, and Up-Down's going to be coming in, and I would love to see it there. So, maybe I can talk to the bartenders.
Yeah, that's another. If you're not a bar owner, but you know a barcade, send them the links to DeathBall. Send it to me, and I'll reach out to them too. The more contacts they get, the more likely they are to add it. And I'm happy to put it anywhere, because I love when fans play it. I love going and playing with fans. So
awesome. Well, it was great to have you on, and I really love playing your game. And thanks for speaking with us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a lot for listening to the interview. Stay tuned for developer interviews and other interviews with people within the industry. And also, we posed a question to the public: what system could you not live without? All that and more coming up from Game and Movie Podcast. Thanks a lot, everyone, and see you next episode.